The United States is in serious trouble. Modern diets dominated by highly processed and fast foods have contributed to rising rates of obesity, heart disease, and other chronic illnesses that affect millions of Americans every year. At the same time, mental health struggles have been increasingly widespread. Roughly 1 in 5 US adults experience some form of mental illness annually, and nearly 50,000 Americans die by suicide each year, making it one of the leading causes of death in the country. Alongside these health concerns, economic pressures continue to intensify. Inflation and the declining purchase power of the US dollar have made housing, healthcare, and everyday necessities increasingly expensive, leaving many people feeling financially unstable and uncertain about the future. These economic and social pressures help explain another demographic concern: the rapidly declining birth rate. To maintain a stable population without immigration, a country needs a fertility rate of about 2.1 children per woman. The United States has fallen well below that level. In recent years, the fertility rate has hovered around 1.6, which is one of the lowest total recorded in modern history. Rising living costs, student debt, housing shortages, and long-term economic uncertainty have made raising children increasingly difficult for many young adults. What makes this trend even more striking is that it is not unique to the United States. Nearly every developed nation is experiencing similar demographic patterns. Countries across Europe, like Italy and Spain, as well as nations like Japan and Canada, all report fertility rates far below replacement level. South Korea represents the most extreme example, with a fertility rate of around 0.8 children per woman, the lowest recorded among developed countries. In several of these nations, populations are already beginning to shrink. When every first world country is starting to face health issues, high rates of depression, and very low birth rates, besides Israel, I don't see these stats as a big coincidence. I start to see it as a checklist. So if we change our perspective from a normal person to the elite, all these things start to make sense, right? So let's talk about the obvious: more land, more resources. If the population start to decline, hey, I get more land. Hey, I'm a stingy person. I want more resources. I want more food. I want more land. The easiest way to do that is to just lower the population. If there's less people, there's less lead. There's a less need to make as much food. There's less need to use as much resources on, other uh, products and whatnot. I can just hoard it all to myself. This is what they're thinking about. So another example, climate change. They're not stupid. They understand that climate change is a real thing. They understand what climate change is. They'll tell you guys, they'll tell us that climate change is not real. Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, 50 years, in 50 years we're gonna be completely fine. They're not stupid. They know that all our carbon emissions are gonna, screw over the world. And they're stingy people, right? They wanna they still wanna fly their private jets. They still wanna go across the world to travel, this, that, and the third. So the easiest way to lower uh, that while still maintaining their, level of wealth and level of abundance is to lower the population. If there's, say, a couple 100 million down in terms of population, then hey, we have to worry less and less about climate change. That's how that works. Yeah. If there's less people driving cars, there's less people uh, that need to use planes and whatnot, then we're developing a lower carbon emission rate, which means that we're doing climate change a lot slower than before. So that's another example. Lower standards of living. So this might be a controversial one, but if we are taking people out from first world countries, right, while poorer countries, say countries in Africa, say countries in Southeast Asia, right, these people, they're used to not non first world conditions, right? So less wealth in general, uh, uh, worse conditions, less public housing, roads, transportation, all that. They're used to lower standards of living. So if we were to take, you know, the population of the first world and cut it down, then we would have a lot more people that, are submissive in terms of, having less and less wealth, rights, et cetera, right? AI, AI is how so many rich people are becoming even richer. And if we were to, lower the amount of people that are working, right, we would need uh, the use of more AI. So if we were to, cut down our population, we would be forced to essentially need AI, right? And then these AI tech billionaires would become even more rich. These people that own so many stocks would become even more rich because they own shares of those companies. So it's one to one. Surveillance, right, is extremely hard to, spy on 300 million people. But what if we were to cut that down, What if we were to cut that down to, say, 200 million, maybe 100 million? Then it becomes significantly easier. It becomes significantly easier. So those are just some ideas. That is just from the greed and power perspective. As, assuming these people aren't just, pure evil, which they absolutely could be. And look at Bill Gates, for example. He was talking about, yo, we need vaccines. We need vaccine. We need to give vaccines to, little African kids so that they can be healthy, so that the, birth rate will naturally decline because, they'll be less likely to want to birth dozens of kids, right? Yeah, I definitely believe what he's saying, and it's not for any ulterior motives. The most recent example was Peter Thiel. He was asked a question like, would you want the human race to continue? And it took him like 20 seconds to give it a non-answer.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes,
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in
Should
this.
the human race survive?
So it's definitely not just about, power and greed. It's definitely more to it than that. So that's all I have for you right now. Stay safe, be well.